Hi, everybody. I'm so excited today to do our segment on sisters and mental illness. If you don't know me already, my name is Shaley Hugendorn, and I just love interviewing women and hearing their stories. My diagnosis is bipolar 2. And you can go back and look at the other videos to hear more of my story. But I'm really excited because today I'm going to be talking to Shelly Massie. She is a regular contributor to She Loves Magazine, and I'm really excited just for you to get to know her and hear her story, because I just know it will touch so many of you and let you know that if you're struggling with something, that you're not alone either. So Shelly, I'd love for you to tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I think if I could say that there was any part of my story that I never thought I would talk about, it's probably this. But then, you know, that's what happens. Like, your deepest pain becomes your biggest story. So I'm a mom of 5. I live outside of Chicago, Illinois. They range in age from 20 until 9. And then we also have one grandlove, and he will be 2 next week. And he is our joy and our light in our life. I'm married to my husband for 20 years. He is a middle school 6th grade teacher. He loves his job. He's the teacher on top of the desk, cheering all the kids on. And he travels all over the place to coach soccer. So that's what he does. And if you can, I've been a writer since, my mom would say probably since I started writing, like learn to write. I've been a writer. In 3rd grade, the nun at the school I went to called my parents and called them in and said that they had a real issue with me because I was a storyteller, that I would make up stories all the time. And bless my mom, she saw that as a gift and said, oh, good, we know at least what she'll be. And so, you know, that has been great. Awesome. So that's what I am. I work full time for a farm to table restaurant. I write for different publications. I'm working on a book proposal right now about mental health. And yeah, so I'll share a little bit more about that as we go on.
Beautiful. I love it. I'm so excited about that. I'm just wondering if we could start with, I'm just wondering, how did you know that things were different or that you needed help?
Good question. So I think there were times pretty early on, probably from the age of 14 on, that I knew something was different with me. And I think that parents do the best they can with what they have right then. And so my dad wanted me diagnosed right away. He wanted me medicated right away at the age of 14 for anxiety and depression. I can look back now and say, maybe I did need a little medication, but maybe I just needed some other activities to do. I think it was normal kind of teenage angst. The real depression and anxiety didn't come in until later in high school when I developed an eating disorder. I developed bulimia and would exercise incessantly and then just gorge on food and purge on food and then vomit it out. I went away to college and the eating disorder almost took my life. I overdosed on, which is so gross, but I think other people might relate. I overdosed on laxatives, and when you overdose on laxatives, your heart stops. And so I was found on the bathroom floor in my dorm room on that February morning. But even then, I would say I didn't know I needed help. I would say I was in complete denial that I really needed help. I just thought, I have big emotions and people need to deal with them. That's what I thought. It wasn't actually until I became a mom that I realized I needed help. Like I said, I have 5 children, 4 are biological. And I had the first one actually when I was a junior in college. Um, she was born in 1998, and when I had her, I remember feeling sad after I had her, but I thought I was sad because all my friends were going to grad school or graduating college or getting married, and I thought my life, I didn't really know the trajectory of my life, and so I thought I was just more sad that this is the way that things were turning out. I didn't see it as postpartum depression. Even the fits of rage that I would go into. My poor husband now, I think, I remember like throwing things and yelling and just like uncontrollable crying, and yet still I wouldn't say I needed help. But when my second daughter was born, I developed pregnancy depression. So I became depressed during the pregnancy, throughout the pregnancy, and then after I was trying to work full-time and raise 2 young kids and finish college and breastfeed. Not a good combo, ever.
Wow.
There are some mamas that you see and they like breastfeed and they're like, oh, you've been doing this your whole life. Like it looks natural. And I was like awkward. She wouldn't latch on. And so it was playing into this guilt and shame of who I would never be as a mom. I didn't attach to her right away. And it was very, very quickly that I fell into a depression. It was then that a friend, a common friend of my husband and I, she just reached out and said, I think you just need to talk to someone. And so I talked to someone and they quickly put me on medication by 15 minutes, because that's all it really takes, right, to diagnose someone is just 15 minutes.
Was it your GP? Was it a GP?
I think it was a psychiatrist at the time.
Okay.
And as I will learn, it wasn't a good psychiatrist, but I didn't know. I was still really young. And we had just moved. Oh, this is the other part of it. We had moved when I was pregnant with, right after I had Avery, my oldest, we moved 3 states away from my parents. So I had no support system, no friends, no help, no nothing, no community. So with that said, by my 3rd pregnancy, I wasn't working, and it was actually probably the best thing for me now, looking back. It was a very chill pregnancy. I did yoga, I ate well, I exercised, I slept. I took care of myself. And even today, he's probably my most chill baby. I mean, he's 15 tomorrow, but he's my most chill kid ever. I tell him like he came out in like namaste, like that is how he came out.
Awesome.
So my 4th pregnancy is probably my first rock bottom. I mean, I guess the others were kind of rock bottom, but my 4th pregnancy was my rock bottom. I became pregnant with her, and I remember calling my sister and just crying and saying, I can't do this. I can't do this again. And she really was very straightforward with me and said, then you need to make it stop. And I really thought over that the whole pregnancy. I became very depressed during that pregnancy again. All of the hormone changes, which are things that we don't talk about, is the amount of hormones that come into a woman's body when she is pregnant, because it's unfathomable, the amount of hormonal changes that happen. And especially if you're already prone to depression and anxiety, it can tip you over the edge. After I had my 4th, her name is Emerson, we call her Emmy, I slipped into a deep, deep depression. I could not attach to her. I didn't want to breastfeed her. When she cried, I would hide. And eventually it slipped into a postpartum psychosis. Sorry.
Never before.
This was 11 years ago, and it still brings tears to my eyes. I didn't know what was going on with my body. I didn't know what was going on with my mind. I just knew I didn't have control anymore. I began to have racing thoughts about hurting myself, about hurting my children. And when you are a captive of your own mind and body, it feels like you will never get out. The psychosis had me believe that the only way out was death. And that was my reality. My husband took a leave from work to make sure I was safe all the time. They removed all the knives from the house. And it got better for a while, and then it got worse again. About 6 months after she was born, he had a horrible tragedy happen in my husband's family. His brother committed suicide, and it triggered me again. And I went into another full-blown psychosis where I couldn't leave the couch. I wasn't doing anything. I just couldn't leave my mind. I could not guarantee that I was going to be safe every day. There was one morning in particular, and this is where the help comes in. One morning in particular where I called my friend Jody, who lives down the street, and I said, I need you to come hold Emerson. I can't do this anymore. And she came in the house and she took Emerson, and I said, and I need you to take all the knives right now. And she did, and bless her heart, she's the sweetest. I mean, she's the girl that brings like casseroles to church functions. Like, she's just this sweet, sweet girl who just entered into this darkness with me and didn't leave. She knew who to call. She called my husband right away. And then she called one of my other best friends, Kim, who is I always say, and she's in my book too, you need a Kim in your life. Kim is the one that will, if I can be really frank, get shit done. Like, you want someone like that, that will take control. And she was my advocate. Kim had known for a long time that I struggled. And so she was so smart to have me write out a plan of action. So if something did happen with my depression, where did I want to go? Who did I want to call? Who did I want to know and not know what was going on? What medication would I not want to be put on? And so that was such a blessing. Kim came over, and she didn't ask. She just picked me up and put me in the car. And she drove me to the ER. There we met with my psychiatrist. He met us there, and he, at the time, the psychiatrist just said that we'll just kind of snow her with meds and let her calm down. Because, ironically, at the time, I was also working as a counselor on a psych unit for teenagers. So it was just too much. I mean, 15 years later, I look back and say, what in the world was I thinking? Like, why did I think I could take on this much and carry it all well? And the psychiatrist did not want to admit me. He just wanted to snow me with meds and send me home. And so that's what he did. I know. I didn't go home. I went to Kim's house. They kept me at Kim's house so I could sleep for a few days. She actually slept with me in the bed next to me to make sure that when I woke screaming that she would be there. It was, everyone needs a Kim. And after that, it got, I guess, better. I learned to take care of myself better. I exercised a lot. I ate better. I was on a lot of medication, but I just thought, well, someday I'll be better, and someday it'll get better. Like, the thoughts had dissipated. I needed to find a new normal, a new routine. And I kind of just threw myself into what it looked like to heal. And then we started the process. Oh, and this wasn't a really important decision that I made, and a really painful one. And it's a very personal decision. So I don't ever want anyone to think like you have to make this decision. But after my second breakdown, after Emerson, I asked to have my tubes tied. I made a really conscious decision that my body could no longer handle the hormones of pregnancy and the hormones of losing a pregnancy, like the birthing process, the trauma of it all. My brain and my body chemistry could no longer handle that. And that was a really personal and just a really personal decision. But also I felt like it was a very healing and smart decision for myself. I felt very guilty for making that decision for a long time, because I would see my friends really trying to get pregnant. And I chose not to, because I knew what it would entail for myself and for my family, what it had put on my family. 3 years later, I had traveled, well, in the meantime, I had traveled to Africa a few times with different organizations working with women's issues and health for women, to Liberia and to Sierra Leone. And I had made the decision that I wanted to adopt a child from Uganda. And so we began the process, and I thought, I'm in the clear. I'm not going to have a baby. I'm not going to be depressed. Like, it's going to be fine. Well, when you go through the process of adoption, your body actually starts producing the hormones, the motherly hormones, that happen when you give birth. And so that's a really good sign, because it's a connection sign that you want to make a connection with this child. Well, when we were in Uganda into September 2012, I left to go to Uganda, and I told my 4 kids here, I'll be back in a few weeks with your brother. So just hold on, I'll be right back. And I didn't come back for 4 months. The Ugandan government decided that they wanted more money out of us, and tried to bribe us into paying more for his passport and for other documents that he needed. And we refused to pay. We never wanted that to be part of his story. It falls under child trafficking. And I never wanted that to be a part of who he was or how he came to be. His story is already filled with so much loss and so much trauma. He didn't need that. Well, the thing is when you're separated from your family and your community and your routine and your loved ones for so long, your body goes into fight and flight mode. And my body went into fight mode. I was in constant fight mode all the time. So when I returned on the plane months later, I came with PTSD. So things had happened in Uganda. I had guns, shoved in my face. Could hear children screaming in the middle of the night. It was all very traumatic. And at the time I thought, well, I'm strong. I can handle this. Like, I miss my family so much. We're going to get back. We're going to bond. We're going to work through his trauma. Like, we're going to work through this. And it didn't happen that way. The first indication that things were not well was when we went to church a couple Sundays after we had gotten home. And I was sitting in church, and I would have racing thoughts again, and I couldn't stop them. And it was they were different racing thoughts. It was, you're evil, you have evil in you, like it was just, not good. I mean, not good at all. So, and you're sitting in church, so you feel it's like it's a complete spiritual battle over your life again. And I remember that Sunday because this sweet woman came up to me and she's like, "Oh, I have a daughter who would like to know about adoption, and I thought you'd be a good person to talk about." And I remember like rearing my head around going, "No, I'm not the right person." I was so angry and so overwhelmed by adoption and international adoption and all the issues that came with it, and just the realization that it really hit me hard that maybe we had made a mistake. And so not long after, a couple Sundays later, we were on our way to church again. We got pulled into the parking lot, and I looked at my husband and I said, "I'm not going in. I can't do this. I can't do this anymore. I'm done." And he looked at me and he said, "You're done." And I said, "I can't live this way anymore." And he walked into the church, and Kim was there. There's another Kim story. And she came out to the car and she sat in the driver's seat and she said, "Okay, we're going to go in now." And I said, "Okay." So she brought me in, and we went into the ER, and she brought me to a different hospital. And the nurse with these Mickey Mouse scrubs on said, "Do you feel like you could harm yourself or someone else?" And I said, "Yes." She said, "Okay, sweetie, well, let's go lay down." And I laid in a room completely naked with a blue sheet covering me, with this teenage boy. I feel like he was a teenage boy standing in a security uniform watching me while my hands were cuffed to the bed. And I lost all my dignity. Kim sat right next to me. She had her list out, ready to fight for me. The social worker came in and was not helpful. She was very shaming and very, she wanted to admit me to the chronic unit, the top unit. She said, "I only have space on the floor with, on the chronic unit. I don't have any on the, so they're like, the top level is like schizophrenia, and that's the only level they had placed for me at." And Kim said, "Absolutely not. You will not put her on that unit. She will never come back to us if you put her on that unit." And I'm so grateful that she fought for me that day. I'm so grateful that God had it in his wisdom and her wisdom to have someone in my life to advocate very clearly for me, who could disconnect enough to be like very stern with the medical professionals. And it kept getting, I remember that day, it kept getting scarier. But then the doctor walked in, the ER doctor who was on call. He came in and he didn't stand above me. He sat down in a chair next to me, pulled up really close to me, and he took my hand and he said, "My wife is your age. If you were my wife, this is what I would do, and this is what I would say." And he said, "You need to rest. Because you have been through trauma, and you need to rest. That is all you need." And it just felt like someone sees me. Someone really sees me, and didn't treat me like a diagnosis or another patient number, but really someone saw me and saw that I was more than an illness. I was more than these feelings or these emotions that were presenting or were present at the time. And so I was so grateful for that. He did not admit me. He actually discharged me with, I'll be really transparent. He gave me a really big sleeping pill for that night so I could rest my brain. I went to Kim's again to sleep. And then the next day I went into outpatient, which is very humbling. It's very humbling. This is what I worked in. These are the patients that I treated. It was not the same hospital, but these are the patients that I treated. These are the patients that I had group with, and here I was amongst them. It was very humbling, but I was also really grateful because I can say I've walked in your shoes, and I know how scared and afraid you are, that you'll never escape what your mind is telling you you're in. I stayed in outpatient for quite a while. I met a brand new psychiatrist who is still my psychiatrist today. I would recommend him to everyone. When he meets with me for like an hour and a half, and he wants to know everything about like my life, every child. I mean, he knows what they've all done and what they've accomplished, and he'll ask about them, and he's smart. Like he knows that we can hide things very easily. Yeah. He knows that we can say everything's just fine. I'm fine. And so he gets us to talk a long time, and then I can, he can figure it out. He was the first one that really walked through PTSD with me. He explained what PTSD was, what it had done to my brain, that I had probably had PTSD since I was a young child. I'm a survivor of abuse, and I'm a survivor of rape. And he said, you've been carrying that trauma your entire life. And he said, so you can look at different incidences like the eating disorder and promiscuity as not things that were wrong with you, but things you wanted to make right. And so he's been very compassionate and gentle with me, but also really stern at times too, that, I know things are good, but we need him to stay that way. So that was 9 years ago. No, not 9. I'm sorry. He's 9. It's 6 years ago. I apologize. 6 years ago. He's 9. And I was thinking about this, that when I see stories told, let's say like someone goes through a trauma and they tell the story right away, I don't think it's fair to tell the story right away. I don't think it's fair to that person. I don't think it's fair to the world. I don't think it's fair to the rest of the story. Because I really believe like we need to hold space for that. And as I was reflecting about talking to you today, there was this fear that came up in me. And I wrote a little thing in my little Goldfinch journal. It says, today you're being interviewed on mental health and healing. You're scared and afraid, but lean into your story. Let yourself feel it all. And remember though, fear is not in charge. You have come so far owning your story. This is a Goldfinch moment, not a shame moment. And I think that's true. I think that we need to hold space for stories. So I have not told a lot of my story around, I'll talk about the eating disorder. I kind of can separate from that pretty easily. But I don't talk about the postpartum depression and psychosis because I feel like there needed to be space. Because I believe that healing is not, it's not set in a margin. I feel like healing is a continual. And I can say that I'm on a continual all the time. There are moments where I feel myself slipping a little bit. I'll run into patterns of I overwork, I overschedule myself, I don't take care of myself physically. I'll miss exercise for a few days. I'll eat a bunch of junk, and then I wonder why I just want to binge on Netflix and disconnect. And it's because I'm not in a good mental space. But it's okay. I don't shame myself in that. I think, okay, then what can I do? Drink your water, get outside in the sunshine, call a friend, you know, I isolate when I am getting sad and anxious. I also get really agitated. I can get really easily agitated. Yes. Where, in fact, I just had to apologize to a sweet friend last night because I like bit his head off on social media.
Oh no.
And it was so, you know, I explained to him, I said, I am so sorry. I said, I like came at you about an issue that I shouldn't have come at you. And I brought with it baggage that I shouldn't have never placed at your feet. And I apologize for that. And I own that. I mean, you know, it's good now, but I find that those are just triggers for me. I still see a psychiatrist. Every 6 months, I still see the same psychiatrist. I go to trauma therapy. It's another story why I'm in trauma therapy, but I am in trauma therapy, and I go now I'm at every other week. We've kind of graduated a little bit, which kind of scared me, if I'm really honest, because it's off routine, but it's good. What else? I exercise. I try to exercise daily. I try to eat whole foods. But I don't mess up. I indulge every once in a while, and you know, I'm not perfect. Oh my gosh, no. But I'm also really real with my kids about owning and taking control of their own mental healing and health. I am not afraid. My kids have all been in therapy, and we are pretty loud about it. We don't hide it. There is no secret of where you're going, Mom. I'm going to therapy. And my daughter, my 11-year-old, loves to say, okay, tell her I said hi. Okay, honey, I will.
I love it.
But we've really tried to take away that stigma of mental health, that mental illness, because I believe that the two go hand in hand. Yes, there's mental illness, but also there's mental healing. And we can do both at the same time. We don't have to say I'm just mentally ill. I'm also mentally healing. And that will be a lifelong process for me. Yeah. I would never tell anyone if they had diabetes or something that they have to hide in shame behind that. You know, like walk your walk, get your freaking ribbon and do it. Like whatever you need to do, find your people who understand you, but also celebrate you.
Yes.
My 11-year-old, ironically, the one who I had the most difficult time with after, she is a lot like me. She holds a lot of big feelings all the time. And I have told her for years now that those are not anything to be ashamed of, that those are her superpowers. That with deep empathy and deep compassion come deep joy. And you will cry very big tears for yourself and for the world, but you will also laugh the loudest, and you will be the front one fighting for someone because you know what it is like. I believe that women and men who are blessed with mental illness are going to be the advocates that change the world.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think of that all the time. I think if I didn't struggle or if I didn't have my mental illness, I think I would be such a different person. I don't think I would put myself in certain situations, or I think I would be so much, I really think I would be more judgmental, but I see myself from just a few decisions away from, you know, being here or being there. And I think about people that don't have community or don't have the things I have. And I just think I would be such a different person. And I mean, I have a hard time saying, you know, I'm thankful, but there are definitely parts that I can be thankful for. And there are definitely things that I don't think I could do. like brave things, right? Because because sometimes I don't think before I jump into things, because if I really thought about them, chances are I probably wouldn't do them. Sometimes afterwards I'm like, oh, wow, okay, you're on the internet, or do you know what I mean? Don't Google yourself. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. I love that. And yeah, I completely 100% agree with that. And thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I just feel so honored that you, first of all, would say yes. Every person that says yes to coming on video with me, but I just feel so honored that you would share your full truth with all of us. And it's just, it's such a beautiful thing. And I just would really like to continue this conversation and talk about some other things, specifically things that are helpful and not, and the church. So I would really encourage all of you to click through to the next video. We're going to learn so much more from Shelley.